Harvard Business Review came out with this really cool, interesting study, and we're going to talk about it because it gives you your power back. And I so often talk to women, and I've experienced this myself, where things happen, right? Things happen in our life, and we make up a story about what happened. And that story is usually based in facts, right? Things happen to us. But how many of us fall into we are a victim of the stories of our life? And so this is what we're going to dive into, guys, because I read this and I thought, wow, this is so simple and can help so many people get unstuck. Because often we are stuck because of the stories that we're telling ourselves about what happened to us, right? And there's this very fine line because what happened to you may be really valid and may be really traumatic, you know, but staying stuck in that story of what happened to us doesn't serve us. We may benefit from it, but it doesn't serve us. And I've talked about this before. So, for example, when I went through my domestic violence, there was a story there, right, about what had happened and what had happened to me. And it was a valid story. Like some horrific, horrible things, quote, happened to me, right? And I became stuck in the story of that I was a single mom who was a victim of domestic violence. Now, all true things, right? So it's not that our story is fake. It's not that our story is false. It can be all true. Those were all true, accurate things. I was benefiting from the story, but it wasn't serving me. And those are two different things. I was benefiting from the story because as a single parent, I got a lot. I got a lot of exceptions and privileges and extra help and extra support and extra, oh, she's a single parent. There were benefits that I had to have like a come to Jesus moment of like, I'm benefiting from this story that I am this broken victim single mom, but it didn't serve me. It wasn't going to give me the life that I wanted. It wasn't going to give me the career that I wanted. It wasn't going to give me the platform that I wanted. It wasn't going to give me the lifestyle that I wanted, right? But for years, I was in this story. And again, I think there's a fine line. I had to do a lot of therapy. I had to work through a lot of the things that what had led me to that, what I had experienced, things that were really difficult. I mean, I've been very open. I did EMDR actually during the pandemic, which was life-changing, to be able to get out of some of that, trauma that had happened, right? But it didn't serve me. It didn't serve me in becoming the best version of myself, right? And so when I read this with Harvard Business Review, it kind of took me back to that. And I want you to think about what are the things that have happened to you that you tell yourself, and there's a story about them where you're the victim. Now, this can be very dramatic, like what I had happen, very dramatic, like we're talking, domestic violence, people who go through abuse, things like that. But it could be also small things. It could be a tiff at work. It could be a coworker that you have a problem with and you guys have a tiff together and you have a story about what this person did to you at work, right? Or a family member. It could be a tiff that something happened, that this family member did something to you and now there's the story about what happened to you and how they handled it and how they didn't treat it. Or, an ex or a relationship. It could be literally like something happened at the PTO meeting and with another mom. And now there's a story about how it was handled and how that made you feel and what happened to you as a result. So we have these things, right, that happen to us and we make these stories and we could be legit victims, but we can also be little victims of our life, little things that happen, right? Little things, little hiccups that happen that then we become the victim in that story about this is what happened. This is how this person did me wrong, right? So maybe rather than using the word victim, think about like how many times are we like, this person did me wrong. This person did me dirty. This person, I wasn't treated the way I should have been treated, whatever it is. So here's what Harvard Business Review did. And they were basically doing a study on the difference between managing your time, not managing your time, but managing your energy. So our Hey Girl You Can in our community, every month we do a workshop. And it's something to do either to grow our businesses, very specifically to grow our businesses, or to grow us as a person. And so the topic that we're diving into is that in business, what do I do next? Like a lot of times people feel very overwhelmed. They feel stuck. They're not really sure what they should do next to move their business forward. And so we're doing a workshop on that, on how do you learn to like coach yourself so that you know what to do next. But within that, we're going to be talking about what this Harvard Business Review is talking about, which is that we all try to manage our time, and really successful people high achievers, high performers, they don't really focus on managing their time. They focus on managing their energy, which is very different. And our energy has to do with a lot of different things. It has to do with our physical, it has to do with our mental, it has to do with, our emotional, our spiritual, so many different things that go into that energy, right? And so part of it, when we're talking about managing our energy, and they get into this study, is that what can mentally drain us is that when things happen and we take on this victim perspective, it drains our energy. It sucks our energy, which, we've talked about this, right? That takes our power away from us. Nobody likes to feel powerless. And that's really what I was doing in that season, right? My ex was like the puppeteer. He was doing all these things to me and I was powerless. And of course, when you're going through something like that, which was scary, and there were restraining orders and police involved, it was a scary situation. And so to say it was a victim is not a far stretch, right? But it was certainly a powerless situation. And so they talk about in this study that there's 3 questions that you can ask yourself that will shift you from being a victim perspective into an empowering perspective where you have more positive emotions. And when you have more positive emotions, that shifts your energy to show up so that you have more energy and you can show up as a better version of yourself, right? And so I just think these is so great. So the first is what's called, so the idea behind this is that we see ourselves, we have this lens and we see ourselves as a victim, or we see ourselves as the person who, that got done wrong. Something happened to us. We weren't given a fair shot. We were, treated badly, whatever it is. And so we want to change that perspective. We want to change how we're seeing that. So the first is called the reverse lens. And this is where people say they ask themselves a question. What would the other person in this conflict say? And in what ways might it be true? Oh, that's a tough one. I'm just thinking of conflicts that I have with people. What would the other person, I know what I say about this conflict. I know what I say about them, but what would they say about this conflict? And what might be true about that? Oh, that could be painful. Because that makes us really look at ourselves and say, how have I contributed to this? How have I contributed to this mess? Then, and that's the reverse lens. You're standing on the other side and you're reversing how we're looking at it. Then they have what's called the long lens. And I love this one. I thought this was I'm like, oh, Tara, you need to put this in your toolkit and use this a lot. How will I most likely view this situation in 6 months? 6 months from now, this conflict that I'm having at work, or this conflict that I'm having with a family member, or the woman on the PTA, or my kid, or my husband, or whoever, in 6 months from now, how is this going to make me feel? I think this is a really good one when it comes to relationships. You get frustrated with somebody, a family member, and you have to kind of step back and go, how am I going to really think about this in 6 months? Or you have something that happens at work, and 6 months from now, how am I going to really? Because think about 6 months ago, the stuff that you were like complaining about, the stuff that was driving you crazy 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. What is the long lens? I mean, the only thing that we know is that change happens and it's inevitable, and it's going to happen all the time, and nothing stays stagnant. Nothing stays the same. I remember in the midst of that whole crazy season in my life with my ex, and oh my gosh, I was in court for 6 long years. And I just remember thinking, this is going to be my life forever. And people would say to me, no, it won't be like this forever. Things will change. And when I was in the midst of that, I would think, they just don't know. They just don't know. This is just my lot in life. I'm going to deal with this forever until she's 18. And you know what? I didn't. It was 6 years. It was a long time. 6 years is a long time, right? But it was 6 years. It wasn't forever. I remember there was the mark. It was a 7-year mark, because I had gotten divorced. We were in court for 6 years. It was a 7-year mark, and it was 7 years past that time. And I remember hitting that 7-year mark and thinking, wow, I've finally reached a time where it's been longer without that in my life than with it in my life. It was like this huge, like, oh my gosh, I finally have been longer without that situation than in that situation. So 6 months from now, how will I likely view this? Okay. So we have the reverse lens, we have the long lens, what's the long term? And then we have what's called the wide lens. And successful people have learned to ask themselves, regardless of the outcome of this issue, how can I grow and learn from it? So even if things don't turn out the way that I want, how can I grow and I can learn from this? Successful people look for the gift. And I will say this is something, I don't know if I'm naturally wired this way or if this is a skill that I've just had to learn to develop through like really dark seasons, is that I look for the gift in everything. And there have been very few times when I cannot find the gift. There's one instance in my life that I'm still like, I don't know why I had to go through that. I don't know what the gift was there. I do not see a gift there. I've gone back to that season in my mind many times and thought, what the heck was the lesson I was supposed to learn there? To this day, I still don't know what it is. Maybe one day I will. But I have to say that in most things in my life, even horrible things, I can see there was a gift. And I remember one time sitting down and going through, the stuff that I had gone through with Emily's cancer and with that divorce and how bad that was, and listing all of the good things that came out of that. And there were tons. Now, would I ever want to go through that again? No. Would I ever want somebody else to go through that? No. Do I think maybe going through that outweighs the gifts? Probably not, if truth be told. But can I see that there were gifts that came out of it? I mean, let's just talk about some of those things. One is that I learned how strong I am. I developed a resiliency muscle that really is going to take a whole lot to knock me down. Right? My daughter learned resilience. I also got to spend a year in a hospital with her, making all these incredible memories that, I wouldn't have had as a divorced mom trying to like work and get my life together. Right. I learned the power of community and how much I learned how to say yes when people asked me, can I help you? I was the person who always said, no, I can take care of everything. And I learned that I took away, like, think about how great you feel when you help somebody. I took that away from people by always saying no. And when I finally started saying, yes, actually, I could use some help. I gave people the opportunity to feel good and to help me. Out of that came my TEDx talk. Out of that came my book. Out of that came out of being able to speak at conferences. Out of that came an opportunity recently where I was invited to speak at an event that raised an extra $100,000 for domestic violence. I would never have spoken at an event like that had I not gone through domestic violence, right? Out of that came, I worked with the Mary Kay Ashtrebel Foundation. I helped our local domestic violence shelter get over $75,000 in grants for their shelter. I wouldn't have done any of that. I got to be on the State and Public Affairs Committee. I got to go to Washington and advocate. I got to be at our state house and help change a huge bill in New Jersey that helps victims. I would never have done any of those things. I've been in a position to be able to talk to other parents and help other parents when they have a child who has a life-changing medical diagnosis. I would have never gotten to do those things, right? So I have to look back and I go, there were a lot of gifts in there. The people, the nurses, my daughter's surgeon, the nurses, women that I'm still grateful for today, that I would have the relationships with that I never would have had. Learning how to advocate just in a doctor's office, learning how to advocate for yourself in a doctor's office. That is a skill that now I will have the rest of my life, right? So I never would have had these things had I not gone through that. Given a chance to not go through those things versus those gifts, I could probably do without those gifts. But you know what? Would I give it can I look back and go, but there are things? Absolutely. So this is where people who have a high emotional resilience, a high EQ, successful people can do this. They can take a reverse lens, a long lens, and a wide lens. And they can say, okay, I can see a different perspective. And when you do that, it takes back your power. And so Harvard Business Review is saying that this is a skill that they use for high achievers like CEOs, people who are running companies, successful people, to develop their energy, to be able to control their energy. So this is again what we're going to be diving into during our Hey Girl You Can session this month. We're tying it into how does this help with your energy. But I think this is something that anybody, even if you don't own a business, even if you're not a CEO, can implement in their everyday life that will change their life. That will literally change your life. I mean, imagine, and I'll give you guys an example yesterday, and I had posted on this. I raced out of the gym, raced through my shower to race down to go to this event. I have 3 networking events on my schedule, one for Monday, one for Tuesday, and one for today on Wednesday, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to race. So this is on Monday. I'm going to race down to this event. And I remember because I had kind of in my schedule when I had done my plan sheet. And if you guys don't follow me, hopefully if you do, you saw me do this. I'm a huge advocate of, oh gosh, now I don't even have it. Where is it? Of planning out your week. So I sit down on Sunday nights. I plan out my week. I have lots of videos on this on my YouTube about the difference between a calendar and a plan sheet and how to maximize your time. And I color code and I had planned out my week. So this was my Monday, and you can see I have my drive time in here, when I need to drive. So I had kind of planned on how long this was, and I had put that the event was about a half hour away. Well, I get into my car, I say to the navigation, hey, navigate here, and it's an hour away. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I had done it from coming from my home and not coming from the gym, and I guess it's longer. So I drive an hour. And I get there. And I get in my car, and I go in for the event. Well, I am at the Tuesday event on Monday. There was no event. She's like, we don't have an event here. What are you talking about? I'm like, right here. It's on my calendar. It says right there by where it says Tuesday. That's the event. And she's like, well, I guess we'll see you tomorrow. And I'm thinking, I don't want to drive 2 hours round trip tomorrow. But that also meant that I missed the event then on Monday. And I got into my car and I was like, okay, let's regroup. Now, victim mindset is, oh, look what happened to me. Oh, I read this wrong. This is totally bad. Look what happened to me. This, my calendar did me dirty. I picked up the wrong thing. Like I would have had a very victim. Oh my gosh, look what happened to my day. I got in my car and I said, okay, what is the good that's going to come from this? Something good is going to come from this. I don't know what it is, but what's the good that's going to come from this? And I utilized the time driving back to make a ton of phone calls that I needed to make to my team. Now, I probably would have done those phone calls anyway, but I may not have gotten them until later in the month. And so maybe the fact that I got them done yesterday was really important. Like maybe there was a reason those people needed to have those phone calls. And I was able to talk to some people that I hadn't talked to in a while, right? And have some great conversations. And to be able to kind of, do some coaching with them. And so maybe there was a reason that those conversations needed to happen at that time, at that place, and I was being pivoted. And sometimes life pivots us in another direction. And we go, this was my plan, this is what I wanted to do. And then life throws a wrench in that and we get pivoted. And I've learned to be open to the pivot. Because the pivot is sometimes to put you in a direction that's better than the one that you were going in. It's to redirect you into the place that God wants you to be instead of where you want it to be. And where God wants you to be is always where the miracles happen, where the good things happen, where the best things happen. Where we want to be is just not always the best. It might be good. It might be great. But it's not the best because God's is always the best. So I've learned to be open to the pivot. I've learned that when that door closes, it's because another one is opening and that one's better. So I just thought this was great. I hope that you implement this. I would love to hear from you. Like, tell me in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Couple of things. Is there a situation that you could apply these 3 lenses to that would change how you feel about the situation? And I would also love to know, which of these 3 lenses do you feel is the one that is the most valuable for you to be able to use? Long, wide, or reverse? Like, which one do you think, if you put that in your tool pocket, could really make a difference in your life? I love anything. I love tools that we can put in our little toolkit that we can pull out when we need them to be able to make our life better. And the way we make our life better is first how we think about it. So this is such a great tool to change how you think about a certain situation. So tell me in the comments, let me know. Now, as far as what do I have coming up for you in my links, tarotgonline.com/links. First thing you got there, I'm still promoting this. I'm talking about this everywhere. Future You, Activate. I'm looking for 10 people who want to read this book with me. My friend Corey Michelle wrote it. Life-changing book. That's the first thing that's in the links. You'll also see all of our events. So what we have coming up is I have a panel coming up in about a week. We have a bunch of experts, and they're going to be talking about your health and how that impacts your business. And sometimes, again, this goes into that. Sometimes we think it's our time, we think it's our physical, but a lot of it is our energy, our mental energy, and being in a really good, healthy space allows us to show up the best. It is a free event. It is a free panel. If you click on events, you will see the Eventbrite. It will take you there. That is going to be on the 21st. So I would love to invite you to be part of that. It's a fabulous free panel. We've got lots of fabulous speakers. And we're going to talk about how do we get to be our healthiest so that we can show up the best in our life so that we can get the best out of our life. Okay. And then also if you're looking for your community, so here's where you're probably going to fall into 1 to 2 brackets. Either you have a business and you need support. And you need support in starting, scaling, and sustaining that business. And then I invite you to be part of our Hey Girl You Can community and to work with me there. Okay. Or you don't have a business, but you're one of the 55% of Americans right now that are looking for side gigs or have a side gig and need to make extra money out of your full-time job. And you're like, how can I do that? Well, I've got a side gig that is a great gig. I've been doing it for almost 30 years. And it is a way that you can make income from home and still have the community, have an ability to make residual income. And maybe my side gig is not your side gig. Maybe you're going to be like, that's not what I'm looking for, but let's talk. I will tell you, and we can chat about like, what should you be looking for? What are the questions you want to ask? If you're looking for side gig opportunities and ways to make extra money, what are the things that you need to be aware of? And here's the thing, guys, I didn't know back in 1998 when I started my side gig, the right questions to ask. I just lucked out that I fell into a great opportunity. But now I know. I know the questions to ask, and I will give you the questions to ask so that you can make sure that you find the right opportunity for you. So if you need that, just DM me and we can set up a time to chat. All right. Thanks for being here. I'll see you Friday at noon Eastern time. And I can't wait to read all of your comments if you're watching the replay.